To me, it seems like 2024 just started yesterday, but we're already approaching March, which is crazy to me. We're now past the All-Star break for the NBA, which was something for sure. I debated making a video on that, but I was busy the past weekend, and honestly, I didn't know what else I would talk about. Like, Sabrina versus Steph was cool, and while I'm not a fan of the WNBA, people are wrong for somehow finding a way to hate on Sabrina, because she balled out. The dunk contest was mid, and the All-Star Game somehow had even less effort than in years past. But I digress. The purpose of this video is to predict what I think the standings of each conference are going to look like by the end of the regular season. We're almost 2/3 of the way through now, and we're past the trade deadline. Obviously, injuries can still happen, and there might be a little bit of movement with the buyout market, but for the most part, we know what all these teams look like. So, long-ass intro, but let's start with the Eastern Conference. Number 1 in the East is a no-brainer, and it's the Boston Celtics. They've maintained a solid 4 to 8 game lead on second place in the Eastern Conference throughout most of the season, and whether that second place team ends up being the Milwaukee Bucks or the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're easily going to hold on to this number 1 spot. They had 2 All-Stars in this weekend's game, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They had Kristaps Porzingis, who could have been an All-Star, Derek White, who is the perfect glue guy, and Drew Holiday is an elite perimeter defender. This is the best team in the Eastern Conference, and it's not close. And honestly, if they hit their threes in the postseason, they are by far the championship favorites. And number 2 is the Cleveland Cavaliers. After Darius Garland and Evan Mobley's injuries in December, I was a little bit worried about the Cavs. I think they were 13-12 at the time Darius Garland got injured, which was a week after Evan Mobley, and they were both expected to be out for like a month or so. In an ultra-competitive Eastern Conference, they easily could have slid down the standings, but somehow they thrived without those 2 guys, and have seamlessly entered them back into the lineup since then. Since that point of being 13-12, they've gone like 23-6 or something like that, and moved into second place, where I think they will stay come season's end. At number 3 is the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're definitely still a contender come playoff time, but they have been ice cold since the hire of Doc Rivers. Going into the All-Star break, they had a record of 3-7 with Doc, most notably a ugly loss against the Grizzlies, who were playing a bunch of G-Leaguers, but they have won their 2 games since the All-Star break. At the end of the day, they still have Giannis, Dame, who's been struggling, but they still have Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, and Brook Lopez, but they need to figure out their perimeter defense or they are not going to win in the postseason. At number 4 is the best team in the NBA, the New York Knicks. They could have made a push to the 2 or 3 seed in the East, but they have not been as effective after the injuries of OG Anunoby and Julius Randle, which makes sense. OG Anunoby hopefully will be back in early to mid-March, and Julius Randle hopefully by the end of March, according to the most recent reports that I've seen. The additions of Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Precious Achiuwa should be able to lessen the impact of those injuries, and with the 76ers Embiid injury, they should maintain home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. Which brings us to number 5, the Philadelphia 76ers. So in this world, I have the 76ers going into New York for a playoff series. It's unknown if Embiid will make his return before the end of the regular season, but the hope is that he will at least be ready for the playoffs. The 76ers have a pretty good team when healthy, with Maxey, Melton, Hield, Tobias Harris, and Embiid as the likely starting lineup, with Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Nicholas Batum's old self, and Paul Reed as a really nice bench playoff lineup. But they need to get everyone healthy, which has always been an issue for this team. At number 6, I have the Miami Heat making a run to get out of the play-in tournament. The Heat are coming out of the All-Star break pretty much fully healthy, and I think Jimmy Butler and the rest of the Heat are going to turn it up to avoid the play-in tournament. As we know, this is not a team you can underestimate in the playoffs. They made the NBA Finals last year, and sure, they lost Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, but now they've added Terry Rozier and Jaime Jaquez, and have a rejuvenated Duncan Robinson playing as well. This honestly is a really talented team with tons of playoff experience, and I see them sneaking into the 6th seed. At number 7, I begrudgingly had to put the Indiana Pacers. It's really hard to keep this team out of the top 6 because I really like what they've done in Indiana, but I had to give the slight edge to the battle-tested Miami Heat for that 6th spot. This is a deep, exciting team, and I love the fit with Halliburton running the show and Siakam as the second option. I just don't see them holding on to that 6th spot in this really competitive Eastern Conference. But if they do end up getting the 7th seed in the play-in tournament, I don't think the Cavs are invincible, and they've shown that they can give the Bucks problems this year as well. And then I feel pretty confident at putting the Orlando Magic as number 8. They're back as a lower-seeded team in the Eastern Conference playoffs, just like the late 2010s. But this 8th seed is completely different. This is not a group of veterans who are stuck in mediocrity. This would be a big step for a young team that not everyone expected to be this good this early. They've fallen off quite a bit since the beginning of the season, partly due to some injuries, but partly just due to this young, inexperienced team. But for the future, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and a plethora of great role players is a nice formula for success. And at the number 9 spot, once again stuck in mediocrity, we have the Chicago Bulls. This team is as stupid as a Kardashian. Putting it bluntly, they just suck. Congratulations, you might make it to 500 this year, and you maybe can make it out of the play-in tournament. Thank God you didn't sell Alex Caruso, or DeMar DeRozan, or Zach LaVine at the trade deadline, because if they did, they might actually have a future to look forward to, and that would be unacceptable for Chicago basketball. And at the number 10 spot, I have the super disappointing Atlanta Hawks. Last year there was a running joke about how perfectly mid the Atlanta Hawks were, but now they're even worse than that somehow. They went into the All-Star weekend with a 24-31 record, and now with Trae Young expected to miss a few weeks with an injury, I easily see them staying in the 10th overall spot. The Trae Young and DeJounte Murray pairing has just not worked out, and honestly I'm surprised they didn't unload DeJounte Murray at the trade deadline. I see a world where they win both play-in games and sneak into the 8th seed just to get washed by the Celtics again. And the rest of these teams I'm kind of going to fly through because they're not going to make the play-in tournament and not make the playoffs. So at number 11, I have the Brooklyn Nets. This is the spot where there's a real drop-off in the caliber of the teams in the Eastern Conference. The Brooklyn Nets tried to kid themselves into competing this season, but that's mostly just because they don't have their first-round pick for like 8 years. At number 12, we have the Toronto Raptors. They made some really good moves this season, trading OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam for RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and a handful of first-round picks. But with those moves, they officially started the rebuilds. Scotty Barnes has really broken out, and RJ and IQ are great pieces with potential, but they will sit in the bottom half of the standings for this year and probably next. The lean-drinking, wife-beating Charlotte Hornets get the 13th overall spot, and I think they have an avenue to be competitive. Obviously, they have LaMelo Ball, who's been injured a good portion of this year, as he has in years previous. But with that injury, we've seen Brandon Miller take on the top option role, and he's done pretty well. We're seeing all that potential that made him the 2nd overall pick in the draft. I also like the fact that they were able to get a first-round pick out of PJ Washington. They still need a lot more, but like I said, there is at least an avenue to be competitive. And yeah, at number 14, I'm going to have the Detroit Pistons. After their all-time terrible start to the season, I think the Pistons will climb out of the Eastern Conference cellar. They've won a few of their last 10 games, which is not much of an accomplishment, but I guess it is for the Pistons. Regardless of their record so far this season, I think they have a much more talented roster than the Wizards, and since climbing up to spot 14 would not decrease their lottery odds at all, I think they will make the climb up to 14th place. And that means that the Wizards will be the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and probably the NBA record-wise when the season comes to its merciful end. The pool party has been a huge failure in DC, and they kept Kyle Kuzma at the trade deadline, who's been pretty good, and I don't know really why he wants to stay in Washington, but whatever. The rest of this team, besides like Denny Avila and Tyus Jones, are pretty much G-Leaguers, and they will not finish with more than 15 wins this season. So let's turn it around now to the Eastern Conference, who I think the number 1 seed will be the Minnesota Timberwolves. As of the recording of this video, the Timberwolves are tied for first place in the Western Conference, and I see them barely edging out the second place team going into the postseason. Their hard-nosed defensive play style is very conducive to getting regular season wins. I don't think they're going to make it out of the Western Conference or anything necessarily, but I do project them as a second round exit, which would still be an impressive season for the Timberwolves. At number 2, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. I originally wanted to give this spot to the Denver Nuggets, but after watching the Thunder dismantle the Clippers in their first game after the All-Star break, I had to give them the second overall spot. Throughout a lot of this season, I've been thinking of the Thunder as a fun team that's racking up a bunch of regular season wins. They're going to be a hard out in the playoffs, but after watching a few whole Thunders games, and as the season progresses, I'm realizing this is not just a fun team. This is a team that can seriously compete to be the team that comes out of the Western Conference and go to the NBA Finals. And as I kind of alluded to, that means that the Denver Nuggets are going to slip into the third overall spot. And to be honest, I don't think they really care. The Nuggets are coasting through this season, and they still own like a 38-19 record, and the probable MVP of the league in Nikola Jokic. I mean, sure, they wouldn't be opposed to hopping up in the standings, especially with their huge disparity playing on the road versus at home, but they are the reigning champions, and they would much rather exert that energy in the playoffs than the regular season. And rounding out the first tier of the Western Conference standings, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. All 4 of the teams that I've mentioned thus far are within 2.5 games or so of each other in the top of the standings, so realistically a little winning streak or losing streak could totally jumble these 1 to 4 spots. But I think the Clippers just have the most to lose by going hard at the end of the regular season. Their hopes of a championship lie on the fragile ligaments of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and while they've done a good job playing games and staying healthy this year, the Clippers would be unwise to risk their bodies unduly before the postseason. At number 5, I have the Phoenix Suns. I think they're currently tied for 5th or 6th place in the Western Conference, but the 5 through 8 seeds are just separated by such a small margin, so it really could go either way. However, since Bradley Beal has returned fully healthy to their lineup, they look to be a really good team. They're starting to get some role player contributions from Grayson Allen and Bol Bol, and obviously they have 2 of the best players in the NBA in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. At number 6, I have the Dallas Mavericks. They made a few nice moves at the deadline, acquiring PJ Washington in exchange for Grant Williams and Daniel Gafford in exchange for something I don't really remember. I could look it up and actually be informative to y'all, but that is too much work. I didn't agree necessarily with giving up first round draft compensation for PJ Washington, but this is not a video about the future, it's a video about this season's standings. And down the stretch, with these new options, Luka could very easily turn it up, and if he can will them to maybe a 5th seed, there is a chance he could win his first NBA MVP. And despite being red hot as of this recording, I am putting the New Orleans Pelicans at number 7. I believe they're 8-2 in their last 10 games and very quietly rounding into dangerous form. I mean, the talent is all there for New Orleans. Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Valanciunas. It's a very talented group, but I wonder if this injury-prone team can hold it together for a competitive race to stay out of the play-in tournament. Unfortunately, I have to pick the Sacramento Kings to round out this second tier of teams at the 8th seed. The Western Conference is truly just a bloodbath, considering the fact the Kings are 32-23, on pace for like 48 wins, and still currently sitting at and projecting to be the 8th seed. Besides the Pelicans, who just have more overall talent, the Kings don't have that guy that can just take over a game the way Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, or Luka Doncic can. I know De'Aaron Fox can get hot, and Sabonis might be one of my favorite players to watch in the entire NBA, but their lack of a top 15 player, plus their painful inconsistency this season, will likely land them somewhere in the play-in tournament. Next, I want to talk about the Warriors and the Lakers, and it's truly been a fall from grace for these two teams that both came into the season with pretty high expectations. The Warriors obviously just won the championship 2 years ago and made the second round of the playoffs last year, while the Lakers made the Western Conference Finals last season, and many people were saying they had one of the better off seasons in the league. The Lakers are slugging along, some days they look good, some days they look meh, and the Warriors are currently on a roll. They just beat the Lakers by 18 points and are 8-2 in their last 10 games. Kuminga's come onto the scene as the second option they really needed due to the struggles of Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, and Klay Thompson off the bench has been looking really good in limited action, and Andrew Wiggins just dropped 20 points in his first game after the All-Star break. Honestly, I'm putting a switch in the rankings. I'm saying the Warriors go all the way up to 8th place, the Kings slide into 9th, and the Lakers will have the 10th overall spot in the Western Conference. At number 11, I have the Houston Rockets. They're a team that has kept themselves respectable all season, always hovering around the 500 mark. They didn't have their pick this year, so there was no reason to tank. But I have to say I am much more optimistic about the future of this team than I was at the beginning of the season. Alperen Sengun made a near all-star level jump this season, and I love the potential of Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore. Dillon Brooks has been surprisingly effective. I'm slightly worried about Jalen Green as he just can't find a way to score efficiently, but overall positive things for the Houston Rockets. At number 12, the Utah Jazz will repeat history from 2023 and be the 12th seed in the Western Conference again after looking pretty damn good for a stretch of time. Lauri Markkanen and the Jazz had a stretch where they were like 12-2, they got above 500, but for whatever reason, tanking or just coming back down to earth, they have gone like 4-13 since that point. I don't see them having another 12-2 run, so they will stay out of the play-in tournament. I'm surprised they held on to Jordan Clarkson at the trade deadline, but this core of Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, Keontae George, and Walker Kessler is getting pretty exciting so soon after trading their superstars in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. At number 13 is the Memphis Grizzlies, and they just had such a weird season. They knew they would be without Ja Morant for the first 25 games, but they had generally fared well without him. However, they started off the season absolutely terribly. They were getting killed by injuries. Eventually, Ja Morant came back and breathed some life into this team for exactly 9 games before suffering a season-ending injury. Since that point, they've had many games where they're practically rolling out G League squads. Honestly, a very big fall from grace for them, since Ja Morant saying the Grizzlies weren't worried about the West. The West isn't worried about you guys, bro. At number 14 is the Portland Trail Blazers. They were definitely not expected to be a playoff team by the general NBA population after trading their loyal superstar Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks, but there was some early season optimism about their competency, but that was quickly removed. In theory, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, Scoot Henderson, there was some talent there, but Anthony Simons was injured for a bunch of time. Jeremy Grant is just fine. Ayton sucks, and Scoot Henderson has also sucked. So that's a recipe for 14th place. And rounding out the caboose of the Western Conference is the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know how many more losing seasons geriatric Popovich can stay around for, but everyone knew this season was going to be a long one, with their star big man Wembanyama adjusting to the league's pace and physicality. He definitely had some struggles adjusting in the first half of the season, but since the new year, he's been unbelievable, showcasing his unique and often unstoppable skill set. As a rookie playing limited minutes, he's leading the entire league in blocks per game, and he just had a 5x5 game the other day. It makes sense considering he's 8 feet tall, but he's also stayed healthy all season, which was a major concern for many people. And that's it. Let me know what you guys think about my end of the year standing predictions, and throw some predictions about the playoffs in the comments as well. In the next few videos, I will put out my end of year award predictions and playoff predictions, so let me know if you are interested in those topics and which one you want to see first. This is the Sports Ball Network, signing off. Peace.